Hey, welcome to Moving Matt. We do all things cameras with a dash of vlogs and a little bit of travel. And today we have some big leaks coming from Olympus about their quote, WOW camera. And well, I'm not gonna say it exactly wows me, at least from these specs, but a spec sheet doesn't really tell the whole story, and we'll know much more when they announce it on February 15th and we see some of the reviews that come out. But let's get into it. Let's get these specs. But before I do, I want to give a big shout out to the Ordinary Filmmaker and also 4/3 Rumors. And I believe there's some other people who uncovered this first. I'll be sure to link that all below. I just want to give credit where credit is due. So essentially this spec leak is coming from the manual. So I would give this spec leak like a 95% chance of being real, but I'm gonna give like 5% chance that maybe someone's hoaxing this. I really don't think that's the case, but there's always the possibility. So jumping right in here, let's get into it. So of course this will have a micro 4/3 sensor, and this will be a stacked BSI sensor that is 20.4 megapixels, or at least that is the effective number. Now earlier we did get a rumor saying that this has a quad Bayer sensor, so it means that it will be able to get 2 stops better in low light. So I'm pretty sure even though it's not saying it in the manual, that is still the case. And it makes sense that that is the case because they were doing a lot of different teasers coming out and they were showing this camera in low light quite often. Now, what does 2 stops better of low light actually equate to with this particular camera? I'm not really sure. I'm not sure if it's going to be on the level of, say, a full frame camera. I would be very shocked if it is. But if it performs very well in low light and it's going to be offering that smaller body size, that is a big advantage. Now on the photo side, this will be capable of up to 120 frames per second RAW. Now that is going to be in the electronic shutter mode, and of course there's different compression levels that is going to make that possible, and the less compressed that you make it, of course it's going to slow down the camera a bit, but still that is a very fast sensor, and I think a lot of people will be very happy with that. Jumping over to the autofocus, which is definitely a big deal, especially in this day and age. The autofocus of this Olympus camera seems like it's going to be pretty incredible. We'll have to wait for real world tests and comparisons, but at least from this spec sheet, it sounds pretty incredible. Of course, they will use AI to track the eye, but get this, they will also track formula cars, rally cars, motorcycles, aircrafts, helicopters, bullet trains, standard trains, steam locomotives, birds, dogs, and cats. So this is definitely a pretty ridiculous list of things that they can track. Let's hope that it lives up to the expectations. Now, before jumping over to the video, this does say it will have 5-axis image stabilization, and I know that is a very big deal for video. Now, 5-axis stabilization maybe doesn't sound like much, especially when you get Canon saying that they have 8-axis stabilization. That being said, it's not necessarily gonna matter how many axis stabilization that there are. I mean, it maybe matters some, but it really is gonna matter how it performs. I know that the Olympus Micro 4/3 camera are really known for having very stable IBIS, and of course the GH5 is known for that as well. So let's hope and have our fingers crossed that they will actually live up to at least their previous cameras here. So moving over to the video, we do have 4K 60 10-bit 422. Now to me this isn't super impressive, especially considering this has such a small sensor. You would hope that maybe they could push that up to 4K 120, but that doesn't look like it's going to be the case. Now, it also doesn't say in this manual, but maybe it will be part of the marketing material, if that will be downsampled 4K 60. I know that the Canon EOS R6 has a similar megapixel range and it downsamples from 5.1K. So we will have to see if that comes out and is the case. I really hope that it is, because as it sits, it doesn't sound very impressive to me, and at least that would bump it up just a bit. Now, if you move over to full HD or 1080p, we have up to 240 frames per second, which is fairly impressive. Now, we do have full frame cameras like the Sony a7S III that I'm shooting on right now that does shoot in 1080p at up to 240 frames per second. So that's not necessarily something that's revolutionary, but this camera is going to be right around the $2,000 mark, and the A7S III is almost double that, so I don't really fault them that much here. But again, I was hoping for just a little bit more. Now in full HD, they do show that it has all intra, but in 4K it does not have all intra. It is long GOP, which again is a little bit disappointing, or it will be for some people who would like to do a little bit more on the color editing side and would also like to have footage that is a little bit easier to edit. Now when it comes to external recording and monitors, this does use a micro HDMI port, which again is kind of disappointing here. Now I know this is a very form factor camera, so we can kind of forgive it for it just a bit, but I do wish they would have moved it up to say a mini HDMI port. I know that the Ordinary Filmmaker said the same thing, and I absolutely agree, because it's pretty disappointing. Now moving over to the screen, which is also something that is very important, especially for videographers. This has a 3-inch vari-angle monitor that is of course a touch panel and is approximately 1.62 million dots. Now if I'm not mistaken, that is very similar to the Sony LCDs, so a little bit disappointing there because the Sony LCD screens kind of suck. But let's hope that maybe they're at least a little bit brighter or something like that, and maybe it can make up for the lack of resolution. This also, which I forgot to mention for the photographers out there, it does have a 5 million dot EVF, which is fairly impressive. It's not the best of the best, but it is definitely usable, and I think will work just fine for this camera. Now overall, am I super wowed by this camera? Well, I wouldn't necessarily say that, but I do think this will be a very solid camera. It only comes in at 599 grams, and that is including the battery with it. So it's definitely going to be a very form factor camera, and I think it will be great for travel vloggers or travel photographers, at least if it comes out and is reviewed as well as the spec sheet looks. But that is all from me. What do you think? Drop in the comment section below and give me your thoughts on this camera. Did it wow you? Did it live up to your expectations? Did you expect quite a bit more? Drop in the comment section below and let me know all that. If you happen to like this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. And until next time, peace.